Who should play Brainiac in the DCU? Well, in an effort to answer that question, I went ahead and gathered a bunch of the most popular fan casts for the character and have decided to rank them into tiers based on how I would feel about that particular casting. Now, of course, Brainiac is not yet confirmed for any specific project in the DCU, but it has been heavily teased that he could potentially be the villain that causes Lex and Superman to work together in Man of Tomorrow. But regardless of if he's in Man of Tomorrow or not, I did just want to talk about Brainiac, as he is one of Superman's best villains and without a doubt the one I want to see make their live action debut the most in the DCU. Now, of course, I'm no casting director and this is just my opinion, so if you disagree with me on a certain actor or if I missed your top choice for the role, please let me know. I am sure I missed plenty of great options and I love hearing about new actors and projects that I need to check out from suggestions that you guys give in the comments under videos like this. But now let's focus in on Brainiac, who is of course supremely intelligent, cold, intimidating, ruthless, and immensely powerful. Now, even though there have been some different takes on the character over the years that have altered some of his personality and abilities, those are the terms that I think best describe Brainiac and what any actor who takes on the role will need to embody in order to deliver a Brainiac that honors what we have gotten in the comics. Of course, there will always be room for different interpretations, and just because an actor perhaps has not showcased those traits in any previous work does not mean they would be incapable of doing so if selected, but I just wanted to make clear my vision of the character and some of the traits I will be looking for in an actor's previous work when determining where certain actors rank on this list. And to kick off this list, I want to start with Giancarlo Esposito, who has been consistently fan casted in this role for genuinely probably the last decade and a half, and I have to say, I honestly hope this is not what we get in the DCU, because I feel like I've already seen too much of this from Giancarlo over the years. Now, I want to be clear, I do think Giancarlo would give a good performance, as I have no doubt he could deliver a cold and calculated Brainiac, and the reason I say that is because I've seen him display those traits time and time again in so many of the roles that he has gotten, especially over the last decade after his phenomenal performance in Breaking Bad. However, if he ever gets casted in the DCU, I really hope he would get the chance to play something different. For example, I would be much more interested in his take on somebody like Zatara, a Jay Garrick, or if he had to be a villain, I would choose Mr. Freeze, who also shares some similar traits to Brainiac in terms of his overall demeanor, but Freeze also is a much more sympathetic character with a lot more heart that I would love to see Esposito tackle if he had to play a villain. But when it comes to Brainiac, I'm going to put him in the I guess category. I totally understand why he is so commonly picked for this role, and if it was announced, I certainly would not be worried about the performance, nor would I really be all that disappointed. I would just be whelmed. An actor who I'd be pretty excited to see if casted in the role is Bautista. Now, I know a lot of people would like to see Gunn stop using actors that he's worked with on previous projects, and for the most part I do agree, as I am in no rush to see somebody like Chris Pratt take on a major role in the DCU, but when it comes to Bautista, I vehemently disagree. I think he's become a really solid actor over the years, and I would love to see him get an opportunity to showcase his talent, and I think a villain role like Brainiac would be a really great opportunity. I certainly think that he has the acting chops to be intimidating, cold, and ruthless, and he certainly would be the most physically imposing when it comes to any actor on this list, which I know some people do not love depictions of the character that are more buff, but I do think it could add to his overall presence and make him a lot more intimidating. I do think Bautista will certainly get a role at some point in the DCU, and honestly at this point it's just going to come down to what that role is. If it's not Brainiac, I do think characters like Mongol or Wildcat or even a Hugo Strange could be a lot of fun. Another popular choice is Rami Malek, and I have to be honest, I just don't know if I see it. Now let's make one thing very clear. Malek is a phenomenal actor, and in no way am I trying to say he's anything but a phenomenal actor when putting him in this tier. But I just don't know if I could see him pulling off Brainiac. The closest role I've seen from him that is anything like Brainiac is probably his work in No Time to Die, but even there would not be a whole lot of carryover from that role, and I just think he lacks the overall cold and intimidating presence that I feel would be necessary to pull off Brainiac. I will say though, if he were casted, even though I don't see it, I certainly would not hate on it, simply due to the fact that I do believe he is very talented, and I'd be curious to see what Gunn and company are cooking. And I hope as a community we've learned our lessons over time when it comes to specifically castings in these superhero or villain roles, to not jump to any conclusions, and that's what I would do with Rami Malek. If he was announced, yes, I might be a little skeptical. I might need a little bit of a proof of concept to see if he can pull it off, but he is far too talented of an actor to actually hate on the casting or anything like that, so even though he wouldn't be anywhere near the top of my list, he certainly could be the right choice. However, somebody who would be at the top of my list, and I think would honestly be an amazing casting, would be Matt Smith. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, he is the actor I can just picture the most as Brainiac, and I do not mean that as any disrespect to Matt Smith. And I know there might not be one singular role in his past that screams Brainiac, however, I do think from the work that he does have, he has shown many of the traits that I think would make him very good for the role. He has shown the ability to be ruthless and downright sinister. He can play cold, unloving, and narcissistic, fantastic, and I absolutely think he could pull off the intellectual arrogance Brainiac possesses. Additionally, we cannot let his legacy in superhero films be his role in Morbius. He is way too talented of an actor and deserves a much better role and a much better script, and I do think Brainiac could potentially be that perfect opportunity. Chukwudi Iwuji is another actor that James Gunn has worked with in the past that I have seen fan casted a lot as Brainiac, and honestly I understand why, considering he already played a character very similar to Brainiac in the MCU, that of course being the High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and due to the fact that I've already seen him play a role very similar, I have to put him in the I guess category. Now I know the High Evolutionary and Brainiac are not identical, as there are some major personality differences which would allow for Iwuji to give a unique performance and not just copy and paste what he did in Guardians Volume 3, but to me it's a little too close, especially for an actor who is already canon in the DCU from his work on Peacemaker. Now it's possible they could just recast Murn if they were ever to show Murn again in the DCU, which is probably never going to happen, so maybe it's not a big deal that they'd be reusing that actor, or maybe he's just going to look different enough where they don't really think the general audience and people are going to care. But I honestly would much rather them go in a different direction. If casted though, I have no doubt he would be able to give a really great performance, as I do think he was just phenomenal as the High Evolutionary, which is easily one of the best villain performances in the MCU post Endgame, and honestly could be one of the best in just the MCU in general. Another actor I'd be really excited to see in the role is Cillian Murphy. Now I know we've seen him already play a DC villain role in the past, and in all honesty he is probably well past the point in his career where he'd want to take on a role like this or even needs a role like this. So I do think that this fan casting is a bit of wishful thinking, but if he did take on the role as Brainiac, I think it'd be pretty damn awesome. He is just such a phenomenal actor, and I'd be so excited to see his take on the role. I think he'd be able to deliver an absolutely chilling and frightening Brainiac. Even though he may be a bit small in stature to be physically intimidating to the Man of Steel, I have no doubt he'd be able to exude power that would absolutely take up the screen and make you truly worry about not only Superman's safety, but everybody else. But again, we could be real here. This one has about a 0% chance of happening, which I know most fan casts do not come to fruition, but this one seems especially unlikely. Michael C. Hall is somebody that I think would be really intriguing to see in the role. I know maybe he has not had the theatrical career that many of the actors on this list have had, and that could bring into question whether or not he is a big enough actor for the role, but obviously Dexter was a hugely popular show, so I do think he does have some name recognition, and more importantly, he showcased in Dexter that he is a phenomenal actor, and I definitely think he could pull off the role. In Dexter, he's asked to play a character that is very cold, detached, and at times pretty intimidating, all things that I think would immensely help him if he was casted as Brainiac. However, I do have to admit, when it comes to specifically DC, I just cannot get the idea of him playing Eobard Thawne or Tommy Elliott out of my head, considering it feels like I've seen him fan casted into those two specific roles for at least a decade, and I do think he would have been a fantastic choice for both. And as Brainiac, I think he'd be really intriguing, and he has the ability to pull off, I think, a great performance. He's somebody that I do think deserves a bigger chance at movies as well, and this could be a great opportunity for him. Mark Strong is another very popular fan cast, and it's certainly possible he could be in the running for Brainiac due to all of the work he has already done with DC in the past with projects like Green Lantern, Shazam, and even taking over for John Turturro as Carmine Falcone in The Penguin, but I just don't see him as Brainiac. Feels like a lot of the appeal for him in this role is due to the fact that he is bald, which has similarly made him a very common fan cast for a character like Mr. Freeze. And I understand in the past he has played roles where he's had to be tough, stoic, and calculated, but honestly, I think I preferred him in roles where he's a bit more of the side character, or honestly, gets the opportunity to have a bit more fun and show a bit more personality. He certainly has a voice that I think could be interesting for Brainiac, but honestly, there are just so many fan casts I would prefer, and I'm not trying to bring Mark Strong down at all, because he is a very good actor. I just don't see him as Brainiac. Paul Bettany is somebody that I honestly would be pretty intrigued to see if given the opportunity. I know some people would prefer to see non-MCU actors, and perhaps to some, Vision might be a bit too similar of a role, but to me, it'd be quite drastically different of a portrayal. I think Bettany is a great actor, and honestly, I thought it was a real delight when he got to play the villain in Solo, and I think getting to see him play something far more sinister and terrifying would be a lot of fun and a great opportunity for him to showcase just how good of an actor he is. However, I do understand if people maybe think this is almost typecasting at this point. Another amazing choice for the role, in my opinion, and he'd be right alongside Matt Smith for me, is Lars Mikkelsen, and probably the work that best showcases how he could be in the role is his work as Grand Admiral Thrawn, where he consistently showcases he can pull off cold, calculated, and when on screen, he has a real gravitas, which I think would really benefit him if he got the role. Additionally, I just think he has a perfect voice for Brainiac, so even though I think he would also look good in the role, if they were to go full android and make it mostly a voice role, I think he'd be probably at the very top of my list. And I do understand, similar to Michael C. Hall, he could potentially be too much of an unknown due to his work theatrically being fairly limited, but I think his actual acting ability is plenty good enough to make the jump to the big screen, and I'd be really excited if he got the opportunity. Perhaps Mahershala Ali gets sick of waiting for Marvel to figure out what the hell they are doing with Blade and decides to jump ship and ends up getting casted as Brainiac. I know I would be immensely excited. Ali is simply one of the best actors working today, and I have no doubt he would be able to give an absolutely scene-stealing portrayal of Brainiac. Additionally, I think he has a great voice for the role, and truthfully, I just really want him to get an opportunity in something soon, whether that is Blade or perhaps something else at DC like Brainiac. Blade would honestly be my top choice because I think he's just perfect for that role, but sadly, I have a really bad feeling he's going to end up recasted, and I do think it'd be very wise for DC to jump at that opportunity and get him over into the DCU, and I think as a villain would be awesome, but truthfully, give him any character that he wants because I think he's just that quality of an actor. And now finally, probably the actor that I've seen fan casted the most in this role, and that is Benedict Cumberbatch, and I'd definitely be intrigued. Honestly, I do think he has gotten to the point where I just see him as Doctor Strange, considering he is truly perfect in that role in my opinion. Now in the past, he has shown the ability to be quite menacing and play a really great villain, so I have no doubt that he would have the capabilities to pull off a great Brainiac, but again, in my headcanon, he is just Stephen Strange, and I've changed my tune quite a bit when it comes to the idea of these prominent MCU actors coming over to the DCU. For example, in the past, I said I thought Sebastian Stan would be a phenomenal choice as Batman, and I still think he would be phenomenal in the role, but I did understand a lot of the backlash towards that idea, considering he is already Bucky Barnes, and it would be kind of weird to see him as Bruce Wayne in the DCU. So for somebody like Benedict Cumberbatch as well, who has already been so prominent in the MCU, I totally understand if on your list or your ideal casting of Brainiac, he isn't anywhere near the list, considering he's already played such a large role in the MCU, and I do think it makes these projects a bit more fresh to have more unique actors who have not yet had the opportunity to star in something like the MCU or the DCEU. I will say though, when it comes to Benedict Cumberbatch, he is a phenomenal actor, and he's also done a lot of work with motion capture for CGI roles, and I think he's a phenomenal voice actor. So if it were to be a fully CGI role, I do think it would help not see him as Doctor Strange, and I think he would absolutely kill it if given the opportunity. But let's be honest, he's going to be very busy doing reshoots for things like Doomsday, potentially shooting Secret Wars, as well as any other projects that he has in the works. So if Brainiac were to be in Man of Tomorrow, it seems highly unlikely that he would even be in the running for the role. But now I want to know who you want to see as Brainiac in the DCU. I'd love to see your guys' ideas in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It immensely does help out this channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.